I'm Dave Baker.
And I'm Andrew Price.
Welcome to Deep Cuts, the podcast where we pick a topic and walk you through the ins, the outs, and the nitty-gritty, so you can appear like an interesting and idiosyncratic person at your next forced social function. Today's topic is...
the Howard Stern and John DeBella feud.
What is the Howard Stern and John DeBella feud? Well, while Howard Stern is now a reputable figure of pop culture, it's easy to forget how truly shocking his ascent actually was. And in the case of his fame-making feud, how dark it really got.
Act 1. Shock radio killed the radio star. In the 1980s, morning radio was a battlefield. It was loud, profane, juvenile, and vicious. Long before podcasts offered parasocial intimacy and endless monologues about mental health, there was a different kind of emotional exposure playing out between 6 and 10 a.m. on FM dials across America, where grown men in bad sunglasses and worse mustaches screamed jokes into microphones and dared each other to go further. It was punk rock for dudes with advertising budgets and a lack of rebellious spirit. It was a coliseum built of sound bites, and it was called shock jock radio. This wasn't just about telling dirty jokes or playing fart sound effects. It was a fully weaponized genre, built to offend, designed to provoke. The hosts were part celebrity, part villain, part friend, part enemy, and the lines between those identities were always in flux. They were essentially the heel from wrestling, or wrastlin' if you're nasty. And in this ruthless world, no one knew how to dominate the battlefield better than Howard Stern. Stern's rise wasn't just about talent. He had plenty of that. His comedic timing was razor sharp, his instinct for provocation uncanny. But the real secret weapon was his willingness to go scorched earth. He didn't just want higher ratings. He wanted to psychologically break his competition, to grind their careers into the dust, to ensure that wherever he went, there would be no question who owned the airwaves. If Stern walked into your market, your options were simple: fight dirty or die fast. So before we get into the story...
Dude, Fight Dirty or Die Fast is a great title for something.
Yeah.
If we had a biopic of the making of the Deep Cuts podcast...
Fight Dirty or Die Fast?
I mean, it probably wouldn't be that. It'd probably be like Loafers and Smooching, but like...
Here's the thing. People don't get creative with subtitles anymore.
No, they don't.
Listen to this. Loafers and Smooching, Fight Dirty or Die Fast. Why can't there be two subtitles?
Oh, what if it's... I've already forgotten it. What was it? Live Fast, Die Young? I've already forgotten.
Fight Dirty or Die Fast.
Fight Dirty or Die Fast, the story of two dudes who just want to wear loafers and smooch.
Yeah. The first thing can be a subtitle, and the second thing can just be like a true fact.
Yeah, totally. Like those sports books that are always like, Barry Bonds, The Rise and Fall of a Hero, this book is about Barry Bonds and his scandal from when he was juicing. This is everything you need to know in the title. Please buy our book.
There was an episode we did that had a thing like that.
There was?
Yeah, what was it? There was an episode, I can't remember the topic, and there was like, they had a book, and the title of the book was just like overly explanatory of what the thing was.
Yeah. I won't say what it was, but we were talking with a guy who had written a nonfiction book about making an episode about a cult that he had lived with, and we ultimately ended up deciding not to do the episode because the cult was very dangerous, and we were worried they were going to come after us because they were suing him and making his life a living hell. Do you remember this?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do.
So you wrote a whole script. Like we were ready to record.
I read the entire book.
Yeah.
I took extensive notes. I did a bunch of research. I wrote a script. On the day of, I think, or maybe the day before, I forget. But
it was
one or two of the things.
It was the final.
They said, we have to postpone this because we can't release the book right now because we're being sued by the cult. So we're going to wait and we're going to resolve this matter and then we're going to publish the book later. So that happened. And then like 3 months later, they emailed us again and they were like, the book's published. Let's do this episode. And I was like, cool. Sounds great. And then the day of recording, like in the morning and like later that evening or something like that, we were going to do the episode, record it with the guy who wrote the book. his publicist emailed us and was like, hey, so he's still good to record later on at this time, but just to let you know, there's a high probability that this cult is going to sue you if you put this episode out. And the lawsuit won't go anywhere because, they have nothing. It's a baseless lawsuit, but they always sue people who talk about them. And I was just like, well, we're not fucking doing this then.
Fuck that. Yeah, like, you want to be the type of person to be like, I'm going to stand up and I'm not going to be silenced and this is my right to say whatever. And then you get that fucking like, by the way, they're going to sue you and you're not going to have any money. And you're like, actually, you know what? I'm fine.
Actually, I'm are fine. Cults bad? Like
I love cults. I'm going to start my own cult. The cult of I want to keep all of my money.
Yes. What is your experience with Howard Stern?
My experience with Howard Stern is I used to listen to him every once in a while, but I was never really that into him because his brand of kind of edgelord stuff, surprisingly, didn't really connect with me at 15 when he was very popular, which is kind of weird because I'm not saying I was above edgelord stuff when I was a teenager, but it just didn't really connect with me. When I was on the Bendis boards, he was a really big fan of Howard, and so I had to go back and like reinvestigate Howard Stern. I listened to a bunch of episodes. Frankly, still don't really get it. Like, I understand why people like it, and I understand the voyeurism of like having the lack of social grace to approach a celebrity and be like, so what's your sex life like? How many fucking dudes you fucking or whatever? Like, I get the appeal of it. It's just not really for me typically. So that's kind of roughly my... I don't know. What's your history with Howard Stern?
He never appealed to me, I think, for a couple of reasons. The first one is just like similar to you, even as a kid. And even though I definitely had my streak of edgelord or like thinking that like really crass humor was funny.
Yeah,
or
me
just,
too.
like,
I'm not saying I'm above it.
Having any boundaries of like, oh, you can say anything or whatever. I think in my heart of hearts, even whenever I was like that, the core of myself has always just really liked really like genuine, good-hearted things. And I just found him to be a very mean-spirited. And it's not like I was like, oh, this is offensive. I just didn't like the vibe of it. It just didn't appeal to me. I just didn't like the mean-spirited vibe of what his show was. I didn't enjoy listening to it or watching it or whatever.
I'm kind of fascinated with him more as a cultural artifact than actually someone I'm interested in. Because I find that, I don't know if this is for you, but for me, I find that I'm more interested in the person behind the thing than the thing. And I don't think this is a typical way of consuming media because I'm a big media guy.
Huge media guy. I love media.
Love media. Big media guy. God damn it.
That is such a weird I'm a robot thing to say.
It's such a weird fucking thing to say. We interviewed Mark Sargent, the founder, or not the founder, but like the person who has basically reintroduced flat earth theory to modern society. And we interviewed him for like a fucking hour as a joke initially. We did a whole episode about the history of flat earth movement. You can find it. It's in like our first year. And then the end of the episode was me jokingly saying like, we're going to fucking interview this idiot and ask him like if he wears jorts, because he looks like he's the kind of guy that wears jorts or something like that. And I sent him an email completely joking. And he was like, yeah, okay. And then we got him on the show, and like I asked him the joking question right at the gate, and then we just had to sit and talk to him for like 2 hours. Honestly, I felt a little bad because he was like a sad, lonely dude who likes comics and was like used to own a comic book store, which I don't think he actually did, but he said he owned a comic book store. And I was like, bitch, you don't mispronounce Bill Sienkiewicz if you owned a comic store.
I mean, the only thing that I need to know to tell me that he didn't own a comic book store is that he said he was a huge media guy.
Yeah, he's a huge media guy.
It was at the end of our interview or whatever, our Zoom session that ended up becoming an interview or whatever. And it was just like wrapping it up and then just kind of shooting the shit as things were kind of coming to a close. And you said something like, oh, like, so you like movies or you like music or something like that? You like kind of like, what else do you like besides comics? You like into movies or music or whatever? And he was like, oh, I love media. I'm a big media guy. And it's just like, media?
Yeah.
Like, literally, are you an alien who's like come to Earth to try to like trick humans into thinking that the Earth is flat?
Yeah.
So that nobody like wants to leave the Earth anymore because you guys are secretly surveilling us from like a moon base or something?
Yeah, 100%.
Like, what do you mean media guy? Who says media?
Yeah, but also he's just like so disingenuous. Like he's a person who claims publicly to believe in the flat earth theory, but he doesn't. He's a grifter who's milking it for money.
Yeah, he made some satirical videos and then actually got a response from it, and then just like leaned into the kayfabe to the point where it became his entire personality.
Yeah, and when we interviewed him, I literally asked him that question, and he was like, "No, I really believe in it." And it's like, that was my failing as not a journalist, a comics person who has a podcast. I don't know, whatever the fuck title you want to put for as a human. That was my feeling as a human, to just ask somebody point blank, "So you're running a grift, right?" Like, of course they're not going to say, "Yes, I'm running a grift."
I don't mean to toot my own horn, but the hands down the best part of that entire interview was early on talking about like this type of things we like, and he said that he was really into like house music, and I said, just totally off the cuff, I said, "Oh, so were you like really? Did you feel really betrayed whenever Daft Punk put out Around the World?"
Nothing.
I knocked it out of the park. I'm trying to be modest here, but I knocked it out of the fucking park.
Did he even? I don't even remember. Did he react to that?
He like, yeah, because the thing is, like, his whole thing is he will go on to your thing and let you mock him. He doesn't care.
He doesn't care
because he just wants to talk about the thing and like get his face out there more. Which you know, I honestly, I have some misgivings about the fact that we did that. Like, we basically gave him a platform to just
I do too.
Talk more.
Yeah, I do too, because fuck that guy.
But that's his thing. He doesn't care if you mock him or whatever. So he has like a good sense of humor about everything because he doesn't give a shit. He just wants to go on the thing. But he also doesn't want to be combative because his whole strategy is like, I'm not going to go on there and be like, and look crazy. I'm going to go on there and be like easygoing and chill. And then comparatively, you guys are going to look like the assholes because you're being like, you're an idiot and you believe in this bullshit. And I'm going to be like laughing and being like a jovial guy.
Yeah.
And let's see which person the audience sides with. Which
is funny because we did that other interview, or we were going to do that other interview during the QAnon series about the guy who believes that Bigfoot is a member of QAnon. And I was obsessed with that guy for a good period of time. I think I've told this story on the show before, but like, he posts all these videos. He has this massive Facebook group of people who maybe or maybe don't believe in his kayfabe, where he pretends that the Bigfoot people still exist and they're aware of our culture and they are psychically linked to the Trump campaign and they're neoconservative or, you know, alt-right, whatever. And I reached out to him. I was like, "Hey, we're doing this QAnon series. Do you want to come talk about the people that you believe are real?" And he wouldn't answer over text. He wanted to get on the phone. So we talk and he's like, "I'll only do it if you read my books. And I want you to give me your physical address so I can send you my books to read before we talk." And I was like, this motherfucker's crazy and he's trying to come to my house and murder me. We are not doing this. Which is very similar to the other story of this cult is going to sue you into oblivion.
There's some good content that almost happened if we weren't scared for our lives.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Maybe we should do this as like shadow boxed digitally.
We just start doing that thing where we're like draped in shadow and our voices are changed, but like, you already know it's us.
Yeah. The Dan Smith thing. Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I didn't care for him because of that. I just didn't like the vibe. And like, as an adult looking back on it, you know, I think my feelings about him are even more strongly that his show is just very mean-spirited and reductive.
I think it's very interesting. Like, I, even as someone who's not into it, can see objectively that guy's like creative instincts of like finding the story, finding the most salacious kernel of whatever the experience is that your interviewee is there to talk about or doesn't want to talk about, and then just running straight towards that. You got to give him credit on that.
Yes,
he's very good at that.
Yes
thing.
And no. I think it's obviously to taste, and very clearly, I'm not the predominant opinion because he's been very popular and massively successful. But as an adult, seeing clips from older clips and even newer clips where he's become like much more laid back and mellow, even more than the crassness or like the, you know, whatever, or the mean-spiritedness or whatever, even more than that, the thing that turns me off about him is that I don't like his interview style. He like leads people and he won't let them talk and just actually say what they think. He like pushes them in a particular direction and he like feeds them their own opinion. So he'll be sitting there and he'll be talking to somebody, and instead of being like, "How did you feel about that?" he'll be like, "So you felt like that, right? There's no way you didn't feel like that. Like, you had to feel like that." And then the guest usually, because unless they really just disagree, usually they just kind of like, "Yeah, like that's pretty much how I felt." And so like his interviews are like very like aggressive, and he's always trying to like get them to say what he wants them to say. And I hate listening to interviews like that, where the person just won't let the person actually speak.
Right. Can I speak now?
I knew you were going to do that.
No, but the thing that's interesting about what you're pointing out is that his interview style is based off of denial. You know, like it's not a yes and interview style. It's backing somebody into a corner and forcing them to say, no, actually, my opinion is X or Y. It's forcing them to say yes. It's not yes and, it's yes but. It's forcing somebody to not seem like the bad guy by denying the question or moving on or saying, oh, that's not actually how I felt. It's predicated on this idea that you as the interviewee want to be liked and therefore are going to say yes. And then it's the interviewees up to their level of strategy to be able to either wriggle out of the question or genuinely agree with it because maybe he's posing a softball question. But I think to add more fuel to the fire of your hypothesis, I would say that Howard Stern's most of his success, as opposed to other media personalities who are interviewers, is that his is mostly based off of voyeurism. Because everybody there wants Howard to ask the questions that no normal person would want to ask because of social decorum. It's rude to go up to somebody and be like, what's your body count? It's rude to go up to somebody and be like, how did you feel when you got a divorce from insert person that's super famous? Whatever. These taboo questions that maybe some of them should be taboo for a reason. Or maybe it's fine that he's asking them. I don't know. I'm not playing, judge, jury, and executioner. But Larry King's interview style is not based off voyeurism. You know what I mean? He's there. He's like, so what's like a real luxury that you have? I don't know.
Larry, I'm on DuckTales.
I'm on DuckTales, Larry. Socks? That's not a luxury. Like a plane. Larry, I'm on DuckTales. Like that very famous interview with Danny Pudi.
Yeah. Which is so funny because when I first saw that, it's so perfectly executed that I thought it was a skit, like a skit.
Yeah.
It was like a stage thing. Like, because that happens all the time. You see like a thing from a podcast where like they got into a fight or whatever, and then you look in the comments and everyone's like, "This was a skit," and you're taking it out of context. But it was real. Like it just actually happened like that.
The two Larry King clips that I constantly think about are I'm on DuckTales, Larry, and the one that he did with Anna Paquin, where he was like, "So you're bisexual," and she's like, "Yes," and he goes, "But you're married to a man, so does that mean you're not bisexual anymore?" And she's like, what? No! What are you talking? Like, that is so... I mean, bi erasure is a thing. I don't mean to belittle that. But it's just so insane that a human would even just think to say that out loud.
I think in the same way that you're talking about Howard Stern's interview style of, like, backing somebody into a corner and pushing them to say something to the point where they either have to, like, take a really hard stance against disagreeing or admit it or agree with it or whatever... Larry King, the way he interviews is like he coaxes things out of people by just not knowing anything.
Yeah.
Like he just seems like he just doesn't know anything about the world at all. And he's like discovering everything for the first time every interview. And he's like, what? Bisexual, but you're married to a man? And then like forces Anna Paquin to like explain to him what bisexuality is.
Yeah, it's like he's like a newborn baby that's been divorced 4 times and is trapped in the body of an 80-year-old man. R.I.P. R.I.P. Larry King.
R.I.P.
You know who never fucking had a beef? Larry King.
Nah.
Except for those 9 ex-wives.
Yeah, except for the time whenever he like insinuated that Seinfeld got canceled, and then Jerry Seinfeld got all mad.
Yeah,
I was like, what are you talking about, Larry? We chose to end. We were the biggest show.
Yeah, that was so funny.
Do you even know about your guests?
Yeah, that was so great.
Which again is just exactly what I was talking about. He just like doesn't know anything and just he gets answers out of people by just being totally ignorant of the world. When he arrived in Philadelphia in 1986, he didn't just find competition. He found a local legend. John DeBella was already a radio superstar. His show, The Morning Zoo on WMMR, had been defining Philly's radio culture for years. It was goofy, anarchic, and deeply personal to the city. DeBella cultivated a loyal audience by being both the class clown and the likable dad. His humor was raunchy, but never cruel. His characters were silly, not sociopathic. He wore Hawaiian shirts, made dad jokes cool, and presided over the city's rock scene like a benevolent goofball king. We got to stop and talk about John DeBella. We got him right here. What are we looking at, Dave?
John DeBella looks like the type of guy whose life could have gone in one of 2 directions. Cruise boat captain or porn star.
Yeah, that was not the cruise ship captain one, but I was going to say John DeBella looks like somebody who like came out of the womb with a porn stash.
Yeah. John DeBella looks like the type of guy who men in the 70s idolized, men in the 80s looked down on, And men in the 90s bemoaned the fact that he went to prison for serial sexual harassment.
So just Ron Jeremy.
Yeah, pretty much. That was the joke. Yeah, you said the quiet part out loud. Yeah, that was the joke. Yeah.
Ron Jeremy, who fucking was living his best life, and then he was just like, "Don't cut down this tree," and then just fucked himself over into jail.
Yeah, he raped multiple people. That's why.
No. But I'm saying like he did that, but he was fine. Nobody was saying him. But then he got into the news because he was lobbying the city because they were going to cut down this tree in New York City that apparently his dad planted whenever he was a kid. Oh. And he like grew up with this tree. And so they were going to cut it down. And so he like chained himself to the tree and got into like the New York Times or something like that. And because of that story, like 3 or 4 women were like, you know what? Fuck this guy.
I was not aware of that inciting incident. That is crazy.
That's why it happened.
That's crazy.
Like he was fine. Nobody was coming after him. And then
I don't know if he was fine. He raped people.
No, but
like, that's not cool.
I'm saying he was fine as in like he could have gone the rest of his life never getting in trouble for that. Or maybe something else would have happened.
Yeah.
But at any rate,
fuck him.
There was a time in which he was not in trouble and nobody was going to me to him or was seemingly interested in doing it. And then there was a time whenever he got put in prison forever. And it was because he complained about a tree getting chopped down.
Man, fuck that guy. Well, and his abhorrent actions towards other humans.
Yeah. I met him one time prior to that. He came in and did a live stream at Super Deluxe. And he's a weird guy. He's not.
Oh, I thought you were going to be like, he was nice to me.
No,
please don't defend him.
He's a creep. He's one of those people where it's like, judge a book by their cover. He's not like a thing where it's like, he's like known as like this raunchy, kind of dirty old man, but in real life, he's like he's just that. He's just like a creepy dude.
Yeah. He looks like a Super Mario if Super Mario was a porn star. And turns out, yeah, it's a me in prison.
The stories about Mario are going to be coming out any day now.
Any day now.
Princess Peach, Princess Daisy.
Toad.
Yeah, Toad.
Yeah. I've heard those noises Yoshi makes. They're cries for help.
Oh, yeah. Any day now. Just the other shoe's got to drop. He's got to be like, they're going to tear down a linguine shop in New York City. And then he's fucked.
John DeBella looks like the type of guy that was the host of a children's like Saturday morning show in like the 60s and then got outed as a fucking sex pest.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. He does. He does look like that. He looks at all of these things in one.
He's like Captain Kangaroo if Captain Kangaroo had no sense of personal boundaries.
Yeah.
John DeBella looks like the type of guy who like walks by like women on set and just inhales just too deeply.
Yeah, he just sniffs hair constantly.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know if this is just a common term that's used, but it's interesting that his show is called The Morning Zoo because that's like the stereotypical name that they call like morning radio shows is like Morning Zoo. Like every time you hear someone joking about morning radio shows, they always say The Morning Zoo with the Froms.
Yeah. Today you're going to join Little Stroker and the Shams for the Morning Zoo.
I don't know if this is where that originated from or if that was just a name that a lot of shows used. But yeah, they're called The Morning Zoo. I thought that was just like a term. I didn't think it was like an actual name of a show.
Well, you learn something new every day. John DeBella.
People didn't just listen to The Morning Zoo. They felt ownership of it. DeBella was a civic mascot. His face was on SEPTA buses. He emceed 4th of July concerts. He judged wet t-shirt contests, like you imagine the caricature of an 80s radio shock DJ would. But he also hosted charity drives with equal enthusiasm. His presence extended beyond the studio and ran throughout the city. So when news broke that Howard Stern, this famously mean-spirited, sharp-tongued New York loudmouth, was coming to town via WYSP and going head-to-head with DeBella in the exact same time slot, it wasn't just competition. It felt like an invasion. Like someone had come to piss their name in acid on the Liberty Bell. Stern naturally treated it like a war. An extremely personal war with 3 foreboding predictions.
I can't stand him. Out of all the zookeepers in the country, I can't stand him the most.
Uh-huh.
And I predicted 3 things. Number 1, that we would trounce him into the ground, the zookeeper. Yeah. I knew we would beat him. I knew he sucked. I knew everybody thought he sucked. It just took time, you know? Secondly, I said that the zookeeper would be divorced once he lost all his ratings. Because he'd be horribly depressed, and it would be terrible to live with him. And also, I couldn't even believe that the zookeeper's wife would really, truly be interested in him. No woman
Without
could
his
be.
ratings.
Yeah, without his ratings. Unless he had a lot of things going on in his life. I couldn't see that being a happy marriage. And I predicted one other thing. The third thing that I predicted was that one of you listeners would date the zookeeper's wife.
Oh, man.
And that's what's going to happen today.
That's kind of getting a little ahead of ourselves there. I guess that recording was from like later on. But such a like over the top inflammatory way of approaching the situation. It's almost unbelievable that this would be like a real thing, that, you know, because the reality of the situation is this very almost clinical business situation where they're like, yeah, we're going to syndicate into Philadelphia, and the time slot that we've been allotted on this station, you know, based on scheduling, just happens to conflict with this other kind of similar radio host. So you're basically going to be in competition with this sort of hometown hero that is kind of a similar type of thing to you. And obviously there's some competition there. And obviously you've got to do something about that. I'm assuming if you're going to move into syndication in a place like that, you've got to do something to try to compete. But this is like, I just never in a million years would I take that to like, this fucking idiot loser is going to get divorced from his wife because of how much he sucks.
But also, it's one of those things of, yes, that is horribly inflammatory, but then having a call to action of your listeners to be like cruel and date this person's ex-wife as like a fuck you. I mean, part of me is like, it's objectively hilarious. Like, can you imagine if Conan O'Brien was like, we're going to get a plant and they're going to seduce Jay Leno's wife? Like, that would have been great. But that's not nice.
So that's getting a little ahead of it, because that's kind of the point of the story. And let's just snapshot that in time, because you are going to regret saying that.
Oh shit, really? Am I?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Here we go. This is me making mistakes in real time.
From the jump, he framed DeBella as a dinosaur, a soft, washed-up relic who told the same old jokes while Stern brought the heat. He mocked the morning zoo format as kiddie radio. Stern wasn't just targeting DeBella, he was targeting everything he represented. Philly loyalty, local tradition, that deeply embedded sense of regional identity. And the craziest part? It kind of worked. Howard Stern arrived in Philadelphia with a body bag. Literally. He came prepared not just to compete, but to stage a full-blown psychological operation. In May of 1988, 2 years into his Philly invasion, Stern threw one of the most audacious publicity stunts in radio history. A mock funeral for his rival, John DeBella. It was grotesque. It was theatrical, and it was pure kayfabe Stern. So this is a news clipping from this event. Kind of going back to what you said before, in a way, it's kind of cool. Like, it just reminds me of like Gwar type shit, but it's like, it feels significantly more punching down than punching up. Because like Gwar, the thing that they would do is they would get, you know, politicians. They would get like, you know, George H.W. Bush or Ronald Reagan or whatever, and they would create this like elaborate, like gore-filled costume thing, and then they would like immolate him on stage. It would cut his head off. They would rip open his chest. Blood would shoot out. They would sort of have this ritualistic sacrifice of some big politician or whatever. This is essentially what he's doing. And, you know, if just to look at this newspaper clipping, basically he held this event in Philadelphia where a big crowd of people gathered, and then they just basically staged like a lynching of this.
It feels deeply weird.
Mannequin version of John DeBella, which is like this over the top, you know, caricature of his face. And, you know, just lynching somebody has like way darker historical context than like, oh, I'm just going to cut off this guy's head or whatever. Like, that's goofy, over the top horror porn. The event was held outside the studios of WYSP, Stern's home station, and he promoted it like a WrestleMania main event. He brought in a mannequin dressed like DeBella, complete with DeBella's trademark mustache and Hawaiian shirt, and suspended it from a gallows on a raised stage. Stern delivered a eulogy, mocking DeBella's plummeting ratings, mocking his voice, mocking his relevance, and invited fans to cheer his death. Also from a logistical standpoint, he's like conflating or mixing up the concept of a funeral and a hanging.
Yeah, a funeral and a public execution are two very different things.
Yeah. Like, it's not a funeral. You don't do a eulogy after hanging somebody.
Yeah, you publicly execute war criminals and guys who like steal cows. No one's like, oh, dirty Jim Bob. He came in here and he stole some of my sheeps. But he was a good guy.
Aside from that, you know, he was a hell of a guy.
He was a hell of a guy, but you know, we got no choice. Got no choice. Got to string him up.
It's just a weird thing.
Yeah.
And kind of confusing. You're mixing up funerals and hangings. It was performance art by way of Demolition Derby, a surreal fusion of media satire and public execution. There were banners, speeches, flyers passed around with fake obituaries. Stern treated DeBella's show like a lifeless husk, a dinosaur act gasping for air. It wasn't subtle. It was designed to humiliate. And it did. The stunt made headlines in the Philadelphia Inquirer. Local news stations covered it like a spectacle. Even national press outlets raised eyebrows, because Stern wasn't just mocking a rival, he was erasing him. And people couldn't look away. Stern spoke at length in his autobiography, Private Parts, about being bullied as a young boy. There is something to be said by folks far more learned in this area about whether or not the bullied become bullies later on in life, especially when elements like fame or power come into play. Wherever you land on the argument, it is absolutely clear that Stern leaned bully. The brilliance of the bit, if you want to call it that, was how it transformed radio into spectacle. For years, DJs had just been disembodied voices on the airwaves. Stern changed that. He made morning radio visual, gave it faces, costumes, villains, and plots. He understood that if you could turn an audio war into a media circus, you'd never lose. Whether you like it or not, radio changed. The audience went from listening to stations to listening to people to personalities. That's kind of, what you were talking about before about your fascination with like the way that he interviews people and stuff like that. Just sitting there listening to it, I don't like it. It makes me feel very stressed out, and I'm sitting there being like, just let the fucking person talk. It's like very frustrating to me. But I do, like, aside from the actual methods and the real kind of nitty gritty dirtiness of what he's doing, and the fact that it's like doing like a public hanging of this mannequin that resembles this person, I just feel like is just like crossing a line in a weird way that I can't fully explain, but it just doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
There is something really fascinating and kind of ingenious about the strategy of what he's doing. Like I said before, this is kind of like a clinical business thing. It's just like, due to the time slots and scheduling, you happen to fall on this. And, he was very proactive in being like, no, I'm going to fucking dominate this, because I know that I'm going up against a guy that everybody loves. I know that if I just start, broadcasting here, people aren't going to listen to me. They're going to keep listening to this guy.
Yeah.
So I've got to turn it into like a war of attrition. And there's something fascinating about that.
Yeah, and just that you can draw a straight line between his shock jock tactics and the kind of thing that he pioneered, and the way that eventually ends up seeping into A, across the country of other shock jocks, and then B, the political sphere, and then C, the world that we have today, where everything is, horrible and terrible and shitty, and people are constantly trying to say and do the most provocative things.
Yeah, horrible and terrible and shitty, but also like very much this dynamic where people land grab like fame or notoriety or like influence specifically by attacking larger people and turning it into this war of attrition, rather than just like, I'm also doing this and I'm making these types of videos or making this type of podcast or having this type of show or whatever. And I'm just going to make it the best it can be so that people will come and be like, this show or this podcast or whatever is just better than all these other ones, and I want to listen to this. But instead, people are like, no, like, I'm going to really quickly gain a lot of recognition or notoriety by like tearing down and destroying this other similar thing. It's funny because we were just talking about this, because I made a TikTok video that went viral and got a lot of views. And there's this one particular guy who I see on TikTok a lot, who like his whole thing is like picking fights with bigger creators so that he can get into a back and forth debate with them, so that he can siphon off followers from them. And that's like solely how he's grown his audience. And he did it to me. He stitched a video that I made and was like basically making this fucking wrestling promo, being like, I'm coming to get you, brother. Like, you were wrong about this. You're an idiot. You're this, you're that. And I was just like, no, thanks. I won't do that, actually.
Which is funny, because you'll fight with anybody. You're in those comments. You're making those reply videos. I see them all wearing a fucking bowling shirt. Just out here. I know. I respect you. I think it's fucking stupid how you fucking fight with everybody, but I respect that.
That's what you got to do. You got to get the engagement up so the video can get views.
I am aware of how it works, but the devil's money.
Not fun. I don't like doing it.
I don't care that it spends the same. I don't want it.
But in that specific situation, I'm not going to give him the satisfaction, because
because
exactly
it's
what he wants.
Yeah, because you usually fight with people that are smaller than you. Am I wrong?
I mean,
am I fucking wrong?
First of all,
totally...
this guy, I argue with people who are just randos.
Yeah, people with like very small followings who don't have large followings of their own. Yeah. Yeah, I see how it is.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, you know I'm right. He's turning red. You can't see it, but he's turning red right now.
First of all, they can see it.
Oh, yeah, that's true. You can. Okay.
You're just fucking jealous because I have 100,000 followers.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah, I think that's great. I support you in it. I'm one of those 100. It's 100,000 me's. It's just all these dupe accounts.
Maybe if you're fucking nice to me, I'll be like, hey, I'm bringing on my friend Dave Baker, and he wants to tell you about his little projects.
I don't need your fucking charity. I don't need your fucking charity, you putz.
You want to come on to my videos and talk about your little deals, your little projects?
Your little bookie books. These books, they're for idiots. They don't even have real words. They have pictures.
I just post a video where I'm just like, you're just sitting there, and I'm just like, all right, hey guys, it's my friend Dave Baker, and he wants to talk to you about something, but before he does, say it.
What am I supposed to say? Loaf Daddy? What am I saying?
Say it.
What am I supposed to say?
Say it.
I don't even know what I'm supposed to say. This is a good bit, but I don't know what I'm supposed to say.
Say, I am your god and you are my bitch.
That's a hell of a thing to say to somebody. All right. Okay. All right.
When I was 19, I went to see the Secret Chiefs 3 at the Troubadour in LA. And the Secret Chiefs 3 it's a band that does like death metal covers of like Middle Eastern folk songs.
Oh, cool.
And the guy who created the band and like the leader of the band is his name is Trey Spruance. He's a guitar player and composer. And he was the guitarist for Mr. Bungle. And I went and saw them at the Troubadour when I was like 19. I think I was like 19 years old. And I walk in, and if you've ever been to the Troubadour, it's a small venue in LA. And like when you go in, right in the entrance, there's like this little thing to the side, and it's just a little thing that has like a bar and like some seats.
Yeah.
And usually that's where like the merch table is set up for any band or whatever. And then you go into the door, and then there's just this little venue, and it's pretty small. So, I mean, I'm sure there is a green room, but it doesn't seem like there's really that big of a green room. So I walk in, and the band is just standing in that little outlet thing.
Mm.
And Trey Spruance is standing there. And also at the time, I'm blanking on his name, but this guy was in his band who he's a piano player from this other band called A Stratosphere, which I was also a huge fan of, but I'm blanking on his name for some reason. And so they're just both standing there. And I just like love both of these people. He has like a plate of food and he's eating it. And I would never do this now. This is just like so like annoying and crossing the line. I just like marched up to him and I said, hey, I just wanted to let you know that you are like my God. And then they were just all kind of like stood there awkwardly and they kind of looked at each other. And Trey Spruance was like, well, it's good to be God. And then he just like kept eating. And then I just backed away and left. And I was just like, you're like my God? You're like my God?
Yeah.
That's what I said?
Yeah. Yeah, weirdly, I have a similar story about Gerard Way. I've met him 3 or 4 times, and weirdly, the first couple times were totally normal. Like, I met him once at a convention, and he was like just wandering around, and I was standing next to him, and I was like, oh, hey, Gerard. And he kind of like turned and went, hey, what's up? And I was like, I asked him a question about Danger Days, just like a normal question where I was like, hey, so, I saw on Twitter a couple of years ago, you were posting all this stuff where you bought this car and, you were developing a comic project. And then it seemed like that project, all those ideas ended up in Danger Days. Was the stuff that you were posting originally for Danger Days? Or was it like, it seemed like it was another project? And he was like, oh yeah, it was originally. And then the ideas kind of just evolved into me just recycling them all for Danger Days. So I just decided to not make that comic. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. All right, have a good one. Just totally normal interaction, right?
Which is funny because I've seen a video recently where he said that. He said the Danger Days was originally not supposed to be a My Chemical Romance album. It was supposed to be something different. Yeah,
originally they were going to do like a back to basics, not high concept record. It was just going to be punk songs. And they've released I think it was called Light Grenades, maybe not. But they've released like 4 or 5 songs that were from that original abandoned version of their, whatever this follow-up to Black Parade was going to be. And then they just scrapped it. They're like, we don't like any of this. They started over and made Danger Days. And he recycled all those ideas from the comic. So anyway, I walked away from him and, it was totally normal. I don't really get starstruck usually. But I was doing a signing at Meltdown a couple of years after that, and I got brought into the back room, and Gerard was there, and I got reintroduced to him as a cartoonist. And for some reason, I was super nervous. And somebody was like, "Oh yeah, Gerard, this is Dave Gerard." And I was like, "I'm to meet you, nice Dave." No, Dave to meet you. I said Dave to meet you. Dave to meet you.
But see, if you were a little quicker on your feet, you could have like spun that into like that's just your thing that you say.
Yeah.
You say Dave to meet you to everybody. That's like your catchphrase.
Oh, Dave to meet you. And he kind of like took a beat.
Like, no, he's not an awkward, like nervous piece of shit. He's just like a weird, like self-obsessed asshole.
Yeah. And so he kind of like took a beat, laughed a little bit, and was like, "All right, yeah, Dave to meet you too." I was like, I literally have met him like twice, and I wasn't weird. Why the fuck am I a weirdo? And then
not gonna lie, that's worse than mine.
And then this is even worse. And then a bunch of my friends after the signing went out to lunch with Gerard. It was like Gerard, Becky, Michael, and maybe Gabriel Ba, maybe? I don't remember. But it was like 5 or 6 people all went out. I knew all of them. And of course you're not going to invite the Dave to meet you guy. Of course you're not going to do that. Obviously.
It changed the course of your life.
Yeah, right. I could have been a young animal. Yeah. Dave to meet you.
That's way worse than my story.
Dude.
Because number one, you were an adult.
And I had met him multiple times and had normal ass interactions with him. And I don't really get starstruck. Like, I really don't. Like, I've met a bunch of famous people and just been like, "Oh yeah, you fart too, sick." Like, I remember being at dinner once with C. Thomas Howell, and people were asking him questions you shouldn't be asking C. Thomas Howell, and it was very awkward. And I remember being like, just leave him alone. Like, if you're going to talk to him, like, be chill. Just be like, "So, who are you? What do you do?" Just pretend you don't know who he is, dude. Don't be fucking interviewing this dude, asking him things you shouldn't be asking in mixed company. Like, this is weird.
You ever still soul man it up? It was me.
It was you? It was you? You were there?
I was at the dinner. Yeah, that's what I said. You ever still soul man it up?
So when you're just feeling frisky, do you ever just soul man? You ever wanted to, just kind of...
That's the only question that is the exception to what you're saying. Like, I agree with you fully, except if you say that, then have at it. If you're going to, like, take it down, like, go Hindenburg level.
Right, yeah. Just burn that bridge forever.
Ruin the dinner.
Yeah. Yeah, you thought Dave to meet you was bad. Wait till you see me just fucking soul manning it up.
That's pretty bad.
The funny thing is, I now have Gerard Way's home address.
Yeah, because he
bought stuff
Shitty Watchmen.
Yeah, he bought Shitty Watchmen and stuff, and I now have his home address, which I'm not going to do anything with.
You
obviously.
failed to tell me that whenever you told me that. Like whenever you were like, "Hey, check it out.
Yeah,
look who ordered Shitty Watchmen."
Yeah, I was trying to be cool.
You didn't follow it up with, and also
Dave to meet you.
And also,
do you think he remembers me?
3 months ago, I said Dave to meet you to him.
Yeah. I've never met Mark Hamill, but he's the other person that I would love to meet, not to talk about Star Wars with, but to ask him, "Did you buy Shitty Watchmen and a bunch of Halloween boys off my website?" Because a dude named Mark Hamill, who has a house in New York, bought a bunch of comics from me. And as far as Google seems to think, Mark Hamill does not have a house in New York. And I put the address into Google Maps just to see where it was. And it was like a mansion. So maybe it's him, but also it can't be, right? Like, it can't. Like, I don't feel like Mark Hamill's that kind of dork.
It might have been an intentional scheme to get your attention. Have I ever told you about this?
No.
Back in the day at the company that we've worked at before you were there, we had a show that was like a horror storytelling show. It was like anthology horror of these like little vignette stories, and it was hosted by a character who was like at first it was animated. There was a guy who was the voice of it, and it was like an animated character. And then our editor at the time, we were kind of like upping the production quality of the show, and he had an idea for like actually shooting when we did the voiceover sessions, shooting reference footage of the voiceover actor doing the performance, and then like motion tracking animation over it to make it easier to do and also like more realistic. So we started doing that with this voiceover actor. And this person had worked for the company doing voiceover on all kinds of videos for like literally years. Like, he was doing work for us before I was there. Like, I inherited these series that
Yeah,
he was a part of.
Are we talking about the same person who was the voice of the Dodgers?
No,
so that's the guy
that's
before.
The guy that came. The guy before that. This
yes.
is the guy. The reason why the guy was the voice of the Dodgers. The voice became the guy from the Dodgers. And so we started doing this, and we made a bunch of episodes of this show. And one day, out of the blue, I get an email from somebody saying that they are this voiceover actor's agent. It's an email, and there's a contract, and it's like, so-and-so would like to sign this contract to establish this level of salary, and they need a $20,000 sign-on bonus because we believe that we are integral to this IP that you're growing and all these things like that. And keep in mind, we're making no money off of this. This is just a thing. I mean, I know. We were not making money from this.
Yes.
It was a thing we were doing for like social media engagement. There was a long period where we just made content that was essentially, it was meant to like circumstantially grow pages so that we could make money off of listicles with ads. So this is like, it's just content for the sake of content. It was during the pivot to video period of social media. But in his mind, he thought like, oh, like I'm actually the star of this thing because they're shooting me on camera. And like, this is this big series that they're making. And I'm like not making any money from it. And I need like ownership over this. So he sends us this contract that's like $20,000 sign-on bonus. I need to have this level of salary, which was some crazy amount. It was like the amount you would pay like an actual star of like a TV show. It was like a delusional shit.
Deluser. No.
Which was actually his name. His name was Deluser. That should have been my first clue.
Yeah, Jerry Deluser.
Yeah.
Deluser.
So I get this email. Here's the thing. Number one, this thing wasn't that important. Number two, I already did not like this guy. He was a weirdo. So it was a super easy decision for me to respond to this email in like 20 seconds and go, all right, we'll just get a different person then. There was this contract. They clearly talked about this for a long time. And I just went, we'll just recast it then. It was like a sentence email response. So the guy's copied in. He sends this long thing being like, maybe we rushed into this. We might not have thought this through or whatever. And I just didn't respond. I was just like, I'm not dealing with this fucking bullshit. This guy is kind of a weirdo. And I'm honestly kind of happy to just get rid of him. And, we had no contract. He was just a freelance voiceover actor that would come in. We would pay him like $500 to record VO for like 3 short videos. And so he keeps emailing me with these long ranting things being like, we just need to talk about this. Like, blah, 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 blah. I've worked with the company for so long. Like we can work this out or whatever. And I just ignore all these emails. He calls the company line and tries to get in contact with me. He calls our finance department or whatever. And it's like, I need to talk to Andrew. And like, they tell me, and I'm just like, no, I don't want to talk to that guy. And then one day I'm like in the middle of interviewing for a job, and he shows up at the building and like barges in. He comes into the studio and he comes into the room while I'm doing an interview, a job interview. And he's just like, I had to come in and talk to you or whatever. And I was like, well, I'm sorry, but like, I'm in the middle of a job interview right now. Like, you're going to have to go out of here. And so he went out. And then while I was doing the thing, I slacked and I was like, get security to kick this person out. And they kicked him out and they banned him from the building. He kept emailing. His emails got increasingly more erratic. He started like insulting me, all these things. So that's the whole thing that happened.
You couldn't have just said, no, we're not partying with you anymore, broski?
No, I did. I said that, but he did not want to take no for an answer. He was honestly like erratic. Like
sure, yeah.
He did not want to accept that we were going to move on to somebody else.
Yeah.
So like a couple days later or something like that, everybody in the video department starts freaking out. And they're like, oh my God, Mark Hamill commented on one of these videos. And I look and there's a comment from Mark Hamill's official Facebook page on one of these videos. And it's this long 3-paragraph thing about how these stories remind him of the EC comics that he used to read whenever he was a kid. And it was like this huge, like nostalgic trip back in time for him. And that host really makes the video come together. And I'm just like, that's a weird thing to say. So I do some digging. I talked to this person who is his friend, who used to work at the company and didn't work there anymore, but he was this guy's friend. And I was just like, so this happened. And I kind of explained the situation to him. Do you like know what's going on here? And he said, Mark Hamill is this guy's mentor. Like whenever this guy moved to LA, he met Mark Hamill at a convention and he like kind of took him under his wing and he's just like friends with him. He has a personal relationship with Mark Hamill and he goes to him for advice on acting and voiceover stuff. And so he reached out and went to talk to Mark Hamill, and he was like, I need you to go onto this video and comment on it and say that you love it, but the host is the most important part of it.
Do you think that was actually Mark Hamill writing that comment, though? Or do you think it was like, okay, Mark is his friend, so he's like, Mark, will you get your social media manager to do X, Y, and Z?
I'm sure it was. I mean, whatever it was, whether it was him personally doing it or him telling his assistant to just write something. Because it was a very formal, like, these remind me of the stories of EC Comics from my childhood or whatever.
I love Bill Gaines, born 1919, died 1976, and his cadre of exciting cartoonists. Definitely not researched from a Wikipedia article.
Yeah. One of the wildest things that ever happened to me at work.
I feel like some of that could have been avoided if you had just replied to that guy's email, been like, yeah, nah, dude.
No, I did. I think I glossed over that, but I was just getting it across that I ultimately was just kind of ignoring him because he kept
You responded
me.
A couple times or something, and then ultimately were like,
yeah, I did.
I'm dealing with
there was
this.
like 2 or 3 back and forths after that where I was like, honestly, this doesn't make any money. This is just a thing we do for social media. It's for pure engagement. Yeah. And, if I just don't feel comfortable working with you after you've come to us, this was like honestly kind of like crazy. I didn't say that, but I was just like, this fucking crazy thing. Like, I just don't feel comfortable working with you anymore. But he just didn't want to take it no for an answer. And then he ended up showing up and he got banned from the building.
Wouldn't it be funny if I pulled off my face and I was that guy? After years, I've breadcrumbed you.
This guy, I mean, I kind of was, I was worried a little for a while that he was going to like fucking shoot me or something like that.
Yeah. Some really weird stuff happened when we were working there together. There were so many stories where I was just like, is this really happening right now? Like, what is going on? Some truly like surreal, like, this doesn't feel real because we're all kind of in danger, but not really in danger, but just enough danger where you're like, this person could go off the deep end.
You're, of course, talking about the time that Jake Busey was in the studio.
Yeah, that was right. Looking very tan. But actually, that reminds me of, there was a time after you left where one of the people in our adjacent...
The guy who went crazy and became like a weird alt-right, like fucking Twitter influencer, and tried to.
Yeah, and he got let go because he was posting threatening things on the internet about how he owned guns and wanted to come to the office, and they immediately were like, fuck this, you're out of here. And then he was like, literally like for like 2 weeks, all he would do is post about our office and post about the people who worked there and like take photos of himself looking threatening and shit.
Which is crazy because like I knew that guy, like I wasn't there whenever this happened, but he worked there when I worked there. Like he probably started the company like 3 months before I left. Mm-hmm. And like, it's so crazy because like, you can just see how that all played out.
Oh yeah.
Because like, I saw the videos. I looked at when it happened and you sent to me the stuff. I like looked into it. I went to his Instagram page and was like watching these videos. And he's like, the fucking woke mob, blah, blah. This was in like 2020. So it was like deep into the like the metastasizing of like the anti-woke thing as like the new alt-right movement.
Yeah, the new unifying great enemy.
And he's just like, oh, the woke mob or whatever. And you could just see how it all played out because the thing about him was he's just like a very unlikable person.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like you almost feel sorry for him, at least prior to that. You're just like, I feel sorry for this guy because he's so unlikable. It's almost not his fault. He's just like, he's really terse. He never says the right thing. He can't read the room. He's really tone deaf. He's just an off-putting human being. Everything he says, it just rubs you the wrong way. And so every meeting you have with him, he just sits there and like the whole time you're just like, oh God, this guy, like he's making everybody so uncomfortable because he's so unself-aware of how unlikable he is. And to a certain degree, it's like, learn some fucking social skills or whatever. Like, I'm autistic and I have learned these skills throughout my life. But on the same hand, it's like, there's only so many times that you can like be bashed against the rocks of like, nobody likes me, nobody likes me, nobody likes me before it like radicalizes you. And then you're like, no, it's not because I'm an uncharismatic asshole who just says the wrong thing at all times. It's because everybody else is an evil woke mob. Like you can see that happening.
I remember one time being in the office with him, and I think I've told you this story before, but I don't remember. We were all standing around in a circle, and somehow the topic of the new Judge Dredd movie came out, the newer Judge Dredd movie, the one by Alex Garland. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm a big Judge Dredd fan, and I liked that movie. And he was like, yeah, I love that movie because he fucking kills people.
Yeah, he's one of those people.
And
yeah,
I was like, well,
for sure.
yeah, I mean, I would have liked it more if it had the kind of satirical Pat Mills, John Wagner tone that the comics had. But I did enjoy it. I thought the violence was like, those slow motion scenes of the like arcing blood and the rainbow effects of the drug stuff was really well done. But I think it just need like a little bit more of that satirical edge like RoboCop in order to really drive the point home that the movie's an indictment of those people, not an exaltation of them. And he was just like, "No, dude, it's fucking cool when motherfuckers get murdered." And I was like, what? You're scary.
Yeah.
He also, at one point, we had gotten some new voiceover talent for one of the shows, and he asked me if I was, quote unquote, working with that new Smoke show.
Oh, God.
And I was like, I didn't even know what he was asking at first. I was like, what?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, he's so tone deaf and he just says really off-putting things where it's just like, you don't realize that people are made uncomfortable by saying things like that?
Like, and also what? What are you talking about?
And also, I'm the Smoke show.
Yeah, dude. Have you fucking seen me? Have you seen these hips, my friend?
They don't lie.
They don't lie, dude. Smoke show.
Standing next to me, anybody else is like an ember matinee at best.
Have you seen these cheekbones? They're like kind of low and weird looking, but you know what? I work it.
It works for me, baby. It works for me.
Have you seen me? I look like a Frankenstein monster made miniature and put into a straitjacket made of a cardigan.
Have you seen me? I look like Shrinky Dink Rivers Cuomo.
Have you seen me? I look like every problematic dude in your high school who hit on you and wouldn't leave you alone. Have you seen me? I look like ex-hardcore kid Dracula, but make it really lame.
So far off topic, but that guy sucks.
That guy sucks. That guy sucks. Watch, he's going to listen to this.
And so did that voice actor guy.
Yeah.
Fuck that guy. Fuck that guy. Fuck that other guy.
Yeah. And fuck Howard Stern.
Fuck Howard Stern. We're getting revved up here. It only gets worse from here on. After the funeral, Stern ramped up the assault. He ran ads mocking DeBella's voice and looks, called him Baldy, ridiculed the morning zoo as amateur hour garbage. He even went after DeBella's advertisers, openly suggesting that they were throwing away money on a loser. The intensity was relentless, and it wasn't just strategy, it was instinct. Stern thrived in conflict. His team, producers Gary Delabat, comedian Jackie Martling, and co-host Robin Quivers, they were all dialed in, spinning the fight into endless comedy. To them, this was sport. And yet, it was hard not to notice the asymmetry. Stern had a national platform, a bigger team, a syndicated infrastructure. DeBella had Philly, a city he was quickly losing. And look, this is kind of storytelling 101. Circumstances so trite and cliched, you'd probably ask for another pass if you were editing the story. Hotshot kid comes in, embarrasses the local legend, and becomes new kid on the block. It's practically Top Gun, albeit with less militarized sponsorship. The crowd wasn't laughing with DeBella anymore. They were tuning in to hear what Stern would say next. By 1990, the ratings confirmed the shift. DeBella's numbers had cratered. He went from king of the city to a cautionary tale. And Stern, he was just getting started. In the summer of 1992, the war between Howard Stern and John DeBella took a dark, irreversible turn. At this point, DeBella wasn't just losing the ratings battle, he was in freefall. His once top-rated morning zoo had been dismantled. His audience had eroded. His public persona, a lovable rock and roll goofball, was starting to feel dated. And behind the scenes, things were worse. His marriage to Annette DeBella was falling apart. There were divorce filings. Stern's predictions, mentioned earlier, had come true. There's winning ratings, there's celebrating the wins, and then there's just being a prick. You could make the argument that the first two are not cool, that we should celebrate everyone with the courage to make something and not define our success on the back of their failure. That's a take and interpretation, but there's no real interpretation for what Stern did following DeBella's divorce other than he was a fucking prick. And then Howard Stern announced a new promotion, Win a Date with John DeBella's Wife.
This is the part where I regret what I said earlier.
Keeper's wife.
Oh, man.
And that's what's going to happen today.
Ooh.
The zookeeper's wife is with us.
She is with us.
Now I'm getting the chills.
She is now mine. She is now completely mine. The zookeeper's wife is mine.
We have her.
I have her.
She's way too fine for the zookeeper. This poor woman, imagine she had to kiss that big fuzzy face with that big mustachio and those gums
And those protruding teeth.
The big protruding teeth. The wax lips. The chicken outfit.
And the bald head.
You ready? Yes. All right, wait a second. Fred, give me something regal.
Some appropriate music.
Some appropriate music for the zookeeper's wife. From the first time I'm meeting her.
A woman who has been released.
A woman released. This is as much a coming out for her as it is for us.
A woman free of bondage.
Dude, can you believe it? Today, on the dating game, on Dial-A-Date, the zookeeper's wife.
Scarlett herself?
Yes, Scarlett. Didn't he call her Scarlett on the air?
I guess so. Yes, his Scarlett.
Yeah, well, screw that. Her name's Annette. And today...
This is no joke.
She's agreed to date one of you fools. And I hope it's...
Anything got to be better than what she was going through.
Robin, brace yourself for lightning. Here she is.
Here
Look
she
how
comes.
cute, too. What a shame you had to go through hell with that a-hole. Come on in. Oh, are you cute? Look how cute you are. I'll tell you exactly what happened. Come here, sit down.
Sit down. Sit down. I'm sitting.
Sit down. Look how cute you are. Nice body,
Cute I am.
cute face.
Wow.
No way he could get you. I've seen this guy. No way he could get you unless he had a happening job. You wouldn't have even looked at a guy like him. I bet you weren't even physically attracted to
But
him.
he's such a sweetheart.
Oh, but you know, be
So
serious.
why are you leaving? He's so sweet.
Nicest guy in the world. Really. Really.
Now, Annette, you poor woman. You poor woman. Take off your
You've
leather
had our
jacket.
sympathy for many, many years. You know that.
Yeah. Why don't you take off your leather jacket so I can
Six
look you
more?
over? Let me look over your body. Because by the end of the show, believe me, I'll be making out with you. That'll be great, huh?
Well, I can imagine that his show will be great today.
Yeah. As he
Has he
tunes.
gotten his new
Fabulous show today,
sidekick
yes,
yet?
Absolutely.
Did he get his new little sidekick? Mark the Drucker's gone, so he got to get a new one.
The sports guy?
Yeah, new sports guy. That's going to work real well. That'll bring him down to about a 2 share. All right, let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is great. You're now mine.
This goes on for quite a while. We'll kind of cover it or talk about it a little bit, but it just gets progressively just kind of grosser and grosser. Number one, it's just such a dirty thing to do to somebody.
Yeah, it's not like the zookeeper was fucking Jay Leno. Like, if he was Jay Leno, he'd probably deserve it.
I mean, even as far as you're joking, at least there was like something where it was like, oh, he like screwed
Yeah.
Conan out of a job.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
He like took the show back from him. Like there's something there. This guy was literally just minding his own business, doing a radio show. And this whole thing is just a marketing stunt. And he's just like denigrating his physical appearance, just talking about what a loser he is. He gets his ex-wife on the show to like talk shit about him. Like what a utter betrayal to just like go onto this guy's like business rival or the, career rival and like your, husband or ex-husband or whatever. And just be like, yeah, he's like the nicest guy in the world. But also like I'm on this show and like fuck him and I'm laughing along with your fucking insults or whatever. Like it's one thing if she came on and she's like, he was an abusive asshole. It's one thing, but she's like, he was the nicest guy in the world. But I'm on this show, like
Giving tacit approval
Yeah.
to you, just like having a hate campaign against him.
yeah, it's just dirty.
Yeah.
It's dirty.
You want to say that again? You want to say you got way too much fun out of that? You want to
It's
say
dirty.
you're having so much fun?
It feels just gross to listen to.
Yeah.
And it gets worse too. I mean, you can listen to the other stuff or whatever where he starts like inviting her to like sit on his lap and she comes and sits on his lap and he's like touching her and being like, oh, you're so hot. Like, this is the lap you belong on, not that fucking asshole John DeBella. Like you feel at home on my lap. Just like gross shit.
I'm not into it.
And like you said, it's like totally voyeuristic because it's just like I work at this company and I have this coworker who sucks and he's always like competing with me and, our boss likes him more. And I wish I could like touch his wife and ogle her and get her to sit on my lap and like totally just cuck this guy. Like that's the power fantasy of this that people are listening for. Even by Stern standards, it was jaw-droppingly cruel. The premise? Listeners would call in and compete game show style for the chance to take Annette out. Stern hyped it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Annette, reportedly estranged from DeBella and legally free to appear on the show, agreed to participate. Some said she did it to get back at her husband. Others speculated that Stern offered her money, somewhere around $5,000, or promised to play it light. But whatever the reason, she appeared.
Play it light meaning go easy on her?
Yeah, I mean...
But, like, what does that even look like? So, like,
yeah, because she's heard the thing. She's heard what he says.
Like, tell me all the good things about your ex-husband. Like, no. Even though she's there playing the nice card, like, she knows what this is going to be, right?
Yeah. What else would it be? He's been doing this. Because the context that kind of makes that even more striking is that this is like 3 years into this. Like, he's so aggressive about this. It's like, you think that after like maybe 3 months, he probably would have like lost interest in like hating on this guy. This is 3 years into it. He's still just like, this fucking loser, this fucking piece of shit. I'm going to invite his wife on and I'm going to like touch her and shit. This is 3 years into this. And he's still going this hard on it. So it's like, what do you expect to happen whenever you go on the show? You think he's going to be like, it's all good fun. John DeBella, he's a good guy, but I won. May the better man win. Like, no, of course he's going to go on there and say some just awful shit. DeBella said of the situation,
this is about, me and my wife getting divorced, right? That's our choice. That's a personal thing, right? To celebrate that out on the street, it's just stupid and how low class.
He's not wrong. What followed wasn't just a bit. It was a desecration. Stern flirted with her relentlessly on air. He gave her a massage live on the show, whispered provocations, invited her to sit on his lap. Robin Quivers laughed. Callers screamed encouragement. It was voyeurism disguised as entertainment. What should have been a pathetic moment of tabloid absurdity became, for a few days, the most talked about thing on radio. DeBella was blindsided and publicly humiliated. People couldn't turn away. They never do, and they really never have. This wasn't just a jab at his failing career. It was an attack on his actual life, on his heartbreak, on the person he loved and was losing. It blurred every boundary between performance and cruelty. Stern called it comedy. Listeners called it outrageous. But there was something gut-churning about the whole thing. Something almost nihilistic. And then, just days after the segment aired, Annette DeBella was found dead from carbon monoxide poisoning in her closed garage. No note, no final words, just absence. The city was in shock. Fans, friends, colleagues all struggled to process it. DeBella was inconsolable. And Stern, he didn't say much. This is what I was talking about when I was like, you're going to regret being like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like you didn't know this part of it yet, but I still agree with everything we were saying before. Like, it was fucked up that she went on this show and did this. It's a betrayal. Like, regardless of whether they're getting divorced or whatever, it's just a horrible thing to do. But I also think, and we'll continue on with this, and there will be more about this, I don't think she fully understood exactly what it was going to be when she walked into it. I think it probably did get much more aggressive than she thought it was going to be. I think there probably is a level of coercion there where you're on a radio show, that there's millions of people listening. He's telling you to get on their lap. What are you going to say?
Yeah. You want to be a good time. You want to make good entertainment. And
yeah. So all this stuff happens. And as a result of this, there's really no information about this because, as it said, she didn't leave a note or anything like that. And she didn't really talk to anybody after this happened. So you could only speculate. But it seems pretty clear from the sequence of events that she went on this thing and she was just utterly humiliated by what happened, by what transpired on that episode. She was humiliated. She probably felt so much shame for this thing that she did, how escalated it got, how far out of hand it got. This event was so humiliating and so shame-inducing that she fucking killed herself.
Super sad. It's fucked up.
It's so fucked up.
It's super fucked up.
This is just kind of putting a pin in this because we're going to talk about this more, but like, it's just kind of the whole point of doing this episode, or the reasoning behind wanting to do this episode, is not in a way of like, let's fucking cancel this guy or whatever, but just in a way of like a fascination with how narratives ebb and flow, because, Howard Stern in recent years has sort of like rehabilitated himself as like, I used to be like this fucking asshole, but like, now I'm much more like socially conscious. I'm not mean like that anymore. I don't say horrible things. I don't objectify women on my show anymore. And he's been largely embraced in that way, where people are like, okay, cool. Yeah. Like Howard Stern, he was always a good DJ. And now he's gotten rid of all that shitty stuff that kind of doesn't fit into our current world anymore. But people just kind of like either just fully aren't aware or just kind of conveniently gloss over the fact that he essentially drove someone to suicide one time.
I mean, I wasn't aware of this.
Yeah.
This seems like something I would know, too.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
Frankly, I've forgotten that this was what the high concept of the episode was. Like, I know that you told me this, but like before we recorded it, because we have a bunch of episodes ready to go. So it was like, oh, which one are we doing? Oh, yeah, the Howard Stern one? Okay.
We're just going to have a fun time about how cool Howard Stern
Yeah, what
is.
a cool guy Mr. Stern is. But like, I didn't remember, and I had not heard of this story prior to you telling me of like, oh, I got this idea, we're going to do an episode about Howard Stern. I was like, oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, in that way, it's a quintessential deep cuts because it's like very famous, very massively successful dude who you assume you know everything about.
Yeah.
When we all know the story of him and
Yeah.
you know, the fact that he had that movie in the 90s, Private Parts,
Yep.
and the fact that like in the early 2000s, he got fed up with the censorship on broadcast radio and he moved to Sirius XM. We all know that stuff. We think we know everything, but a lot of people seemingly don't know about the footnote of like kind of like murder by proxy of humiliating a woman live on air.
But that's the reason that we do the show, right? Is to interrogate these things. And sometimes they're, oh, wow, look at this really cool thing that somebody did that deserves more light on it. And, oh, wow, this is dark. What the fuck is this?
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more as this goes on. There was a brief statement, something canned and corporate. Then he moved on, business as usual. The next week, the Howard Stern show was back to jokes, sex talk, and celebrity gossip, like it had never happened. To this day, Stern rarely discusses the incident. It remains one of the darkest shadows in his legacy. A reminder that the appetite for shock can sometimes outpace the ability to reflect. And for DeBella, it was more than a loss. It was the final note in a brutal symphony of public collapse. Well, Dave, I think I know the answer to this, but how are we feeling about the ballad of Howard Stern and John DeBella so far?
Not good. Not good. Pretty fucked up that you do this to another person for ratings. Pretty sad that this guy didn't do anything to warrant this behavior. And pretty crazy that he was able to like use this as the jet fuel to escape weirdo personality, gravitational pull, and like become a superstar that everyone knows, you know?
Yeah. Well, speaking of using really horrible actions to gravitate out of the field of being a weirdo into notoriety.
Like wearing bowling shirts?
Do you have anything you want to pitch? No, it's just a defense mechanism at this point.
Wearing bowling shirts is a defense mechanism? It's how you shield yourself from being critiqued?
No, it's this stock insult of the bowling shirt, which I'm not even fucking wearing right now. It would be one thing if I was wearing it. Well,
it's less that it's a stock insult and more it's something that's just really funny and the listeners keep clamoring for. You know, everyone across both our public and private lives. I walk down the street and, you know, it's like Baba Booey or like, hey, Fonz. Like people are just like, talk shit about his terrible shirt.
You think the listeners of Deep Cuts are more likely to relate to somebody bullying somebody over their clothes or relate to somebody who takes hardline stances about the differences between polo shirts and bowling shirts?
Yeah, that's a great point. They would totally side on the monastic devotion to minutia that you've established 100%. But here's the thing. I'm more charismatic, so maybe I can win them over? Come on, Junior Sleuths. Help me bully Spandrew into being... Andrew. Help me bully Spandrew into...
You just said it again!
Fuck! Bullying Andrew into... It's so ingrained in my fucking vocal patterns now. Like, I can't help it.
You're speaking of acts of betrayal, you really how much of a betrayal it is for you to say that to me?
It's huge, yeah. No, I think people should buy Mary Tyler Moore because it's nice. Unlike me, who apparently is very mean to you today.
There's something about, like, you know, now that you're back, you're just like way more mean.
Yeah, I've experienced the cruelties of life, and I must pass them on. Hurt people. Andrew.
I know now that's very true.
Yeah, it's true. I like that you're painting yourself as the villain, as if you don't make fun of me constantly too.
You mean paint myself as the victim?
Yeah, what did I say?
You said paint myself as the villain.
Oh, well, I guess it kind of works, but yeah, paint yourself as the victim. Yeah, that's more what I meant. Anyway, Mary Tyler Moorhawk's cool.
The key difference is that I manipulatively do it in situations where you can't tell anybody, and I slowly gaslight you.
That's true.
Into thinking that I don't do that.
You slowly erode my self-confidence over years and years, making me dependent on you as the only person who loves me. Yeah. When in reality, you loathe me and you hate me and you're trying to systematically disassemble me as a person. Yeah.
Yeah, just really break you down to the inner child.
Yeah, so that you can torture that child. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Mary Tyler Moorhawk is an action-adventure comic / future journalism graphic novel that I wrote and drew that Top Shelf put out. It's about a guy in the future named Dave Baker who's obsessed with a TV show named Mary Tyler Moorhawk, which is adapted from a comic book series named Mary Tyler Moorhawk that only lasted 9 issues. And then the show only lasted 9 episodes too before getting canceled. And in this distant future, all physical objects and private ownership has been outlawed. So this journalist, Dave Baker, is obsessed with collecting things, and he goes to underground swap meets where people called physicalists collect and hoard objects that the government doesn't want them to have. They're obsessed with all things old and nostalgic, and they like weird TV shows and comics and records and such. And the book is half graphic novel, half novel, where you follow this obsessive journalist's descent into madness as he attempts to track down the creator of said comics and show, who's also named Dave Baker. I think it's kind of cool, but my name also is Dave Baker. Andrew, do you have...
Guy who writes books where 2 of the characters are himself and makes fun of people's shirts.
Yeah. That's actually the first line of the book, is I knew he would be my enemy when I gazed upon his fucking bowling shirt. Anyway, Andrew, you got anything you want to fucking promote? Tell our listeners about?
Promote my broken heart.
Promote your foot inside my broken ass, maybe?
That too.
Joke's on you, because that's what I think of as a good time, you know what I'm saying?
Well, that's why I can't ever win with you. Anytime I ever try to exact revenge, you're into it.
I know. Yeah, I'm like the pinhead of, we have such delights to show you, or the angels to some, demons to others, but I'm just like, hurt me, daddy.
Yeah, so I can't bully you even if I wanted to. It's
even
impossible.
though you try habitually in private where no one else can witness it.
Yeah.
But you know what, honestly, after you bully me, you give me the little forehead kisses and it's fine. Anyway, you got anything you want to promote to the readers or listeners?
Yeah, if you want to follow us on social media, you can go to Facebook and you can search for Deep Cuts Podcast. You can also join our Facebook group, the Deep Cuts Podcast Facebook group, where we have a cool community of people who talk about the show and make memes and other cool stuff. You can also join our Discord server by going to bit.ly.com/deepcutsdiscord, where we talk about the show, make memes, play games, and other cool things. Talk about other things not related to the show. It's just a cool little community that's a little bit more in depth. You can follow us on Instagram at Deep Cuts Pod. You can follow us on TikTok at Mystery Treehouse. And you can follow me on TikTok at Treehouse Detective. Act 2, After the Fire. There's a moment that haunts the edge of the story, one that never made the papers, never became a stern bit, and yet looms over everything like smoke after a house fire. After Annette DeBella's death, John DeBella disappeared. Not from Earth, not from radio, but from the character he built, the happy-go-lucky, prank-slinging jester of Philadelphia mornings. That persona died with her. Friends said he became quiet, withdrawn, still on the air, still clocking in at WMMR, but barely there in spirit. By the fall of 1993, he was pushed out of the morning slot entirely, replaced by a generic rock format that was cheaper and safer. No one blamed him. His wife was gone, his career was in pieces, and his greatest rival was still laughing. In a piece by Philadelphia Weekly, DeBella himself says some dark stuff about her death, though.
I think she thought she was getting the last laugh.
DeBella said,
I think if Howard knew how sick Annette was, he would never have gone there. And being on the show played into it. She was trying to hurt me any way she could.
It also mentions in the piece that the divorce began when Annette found an unsent love letter to his future wife. And look, this is a personal relationship that is built of years and moments and histories that we have no context to. However, what a thing to say about a loved one. Maybe one that was mentally unwell on top of all of that. Stern, for his part, never publicly took responsibility. He never apologized on air. He never addressed Annette DeBella's death in any meaningful way. The closest he came was a brief, flippant acknowledgement in interviews years later, chalking up his actions to the culture of the time. When we talk about the past, we all write fiction. Stern can argue that's who he was and not who he is, or that it was all a joke. All of that can be true and exist at the same time. But for DeBella, there was no clean line between entertainment and life. Stern took that from him. He'd been drawn into a war for ratings and left with nothing. There's a word for this kind of loss, collateral damage, but it feels too tidy, too sterile. What happened to DeBella wasn't just personal tragedy, it was institutional failure. The FCC didn't step in. The station didn't stop the promotion. The press didn't condemn it. In 1992, a man staging a win a date with your enemy's wife game on live radio was just another Tuesday. And if you listen to those episodes today, if you can find them, they're hard to sit through. Not because of the raunch or the language, but because of the tone. There's a glee in Stern's voice, an audible delight in DeBella's unraveling. He's not joking from a distance. He's pushing closer and closer to the edge, trying to see what happens when the curtain finally rips all the way open. It's not shock jock radio, it's ritual. There's an almost mythical quality to the cruelty, a theater of humiliation designed to break a man, not just professionally, but existentially. Stern's crew laughed. The audience laughed. The station promoted it like a prize fight. And behind the scenes, a marriage was falling apart. Not just by the public exposure, but by the implications that she was stakes. Going back again to Stern's prediction, she was part of the plan, a hilarious aftermath. She'd already been struggling. The attention, the commodification, the sheer relentlessness of it didn't help. And in the aftermath, when she was gone, no one wanted to connect the dots. No one wanted to ask if radio had pushed too far. Because if they did, they'd have to admit it wasn't just one man who broke the rules. It was an entire system. It was us that let him. What are your final thoughts about this thing with Howard Stern and John DeBella that, as you said, you literally had never heard of before?
The main takeaway for me is I'm shocked I've never heard about it. Because these types of stories, like let's just take, for example, Marky Mark and the, altercations that he was in with people of other races. I think most notably, he was arrested for beating a Vietnamese man.
Beating a Vietnamese man half to death, and I think he
blinded him,
Blinded him in one eye. Yeah, or maybe he made him deaf in one ear. It was one of the two.
Yeah, but that's a story that I'm not saying it's public knowledge and that when the Transformers movies roll out that he was a star in
when the Transformers movie roll out?
Sure, okay. When the Transformers movie premiered that he was the main star of when they were transitioning the franchise away from Shia LaBeouf, that's a story I saw around, but I had known about it previously. And I also feel like it's a story that just kind of pops up every once in a while. It's not like it's ended his career. It's not like he's being, taken out in the court of public opinion and retried over and over again. But it's a fact that people are aware about him, and one that, maybe his current pivot to Christianity and, that type of born-again logic stuff, maybe it has a piece of that. Maybe he looked inside and was like, I'm really not happy with who I was or who I am, and he wanted to work on some of that, right? I don't know. But it's a story that you're aware of, culturally, it's not something that's buried. It's something that's very out in the open. There are multiple actors you're just kind of aware of these horrible things, some purposeful, some not purposeful,
Matthew Broderick killing somebody in a car accident because he was driving on the wrong side of the road in Ireland, I think.
Yeah, totally. I'm not saying he's faultless there, but it objectively is not premeditated murder. It's a different thing. And was he held to account for it? Frankly, it doesn't seem like it. It seems like his fame helped him escape from that scot-free.
And also there was a time where you could kind of...
Murder someone?
Well, you could just... controversies like that would happen, and there was a different...
Yeah.
People put celebrities on a different wavelength where it was that celebrity did that, but not
Jared Leto. Well, him too. He just got outed. But no, the celebrity from is he in St. Elmo's Fire in a bunch of movies in the 80s?
Rob Lowe.
Rob Lowe.
Yeah,
he had a three-way with two underage girls, right? Or was it one girl who was underage and one girl who was 18?
I think it was one girl, but one girl too many.
Yeah, totally. And then he got taken to court for it. And now everyone's just completely moved on. No one cares at all.
Yeah, he's completely come out of that unscathed. And even they did it was probably back in 2014, 2015, they did the Comedy Central roast of Rob Lowe, and they made a bunch of jokes about that.
Yeah, totally.
A bunch of people pointed out that thing.
I'm not saying it's chill that he did that, but I am saying he is culturally rehabilitated to the degree that at the very least people are aware that that is a thing that he did. And maybe this is a story that more people are aware of, but it doesn't feel like it to me. I wasn't aware that it existed.
I don't think it's a widely known thing. I mean, these other stories also happened a long time ago, and they're also much more well known, so I don't really know exactly what the difference is there. I do know that, I think the reason why a lot of these things, there's these stories about people that happened in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and they're kind of still around, and they did these things, but, people know about them, but they're not, canceling them or whatever the word is. I think that to a certain degree, there's, a weird thing that happens in society where past a certain year we kind of just plug our ears to things of oh, that happened in the 80s, well
yeah,
and obviously part of it is the passage of time. But if Mark Wahlberg beat a Vietnamese man half to death like 6 years ago, he'd be done. But the fact that it happened in the early 90s or late 80s or whatever it was.
Yeah, before he was really famous.
Yeah, everybody was like, that's fucked up, but also like,
Yeah. Do you think the trajectory of Jonathan Majors is even in this same ballpark? Do you think Jonathan Majors, like his comeback tour and everything, like, do you think that's going to work? Do you think that's a part of this conversation?
No, not necessarily. Like I said, I think there's like a weird time frame that people have like arbitrarily applied to things where it's like, you know, there's a ton of celebrities who had controversies about like domestic violence or abuse or whatever. Like, you know, Sean Penn allegedly like tied up Madonna
He
and
like kidnapped her, I think. Yeah.
burned her or something like that. And then like Bill Murray apparently did a very similar thing.
Oh my God, really? I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean it's just like a story that people tell of like, yeah, Bill Murray like hit his girlfriend and like tied her up or whatever. And like, you know, Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin like held a 16-year-old girl hostage and like kept her as like a sex slave. But like, it's not that people are like, that's fine or that's okay. But like, for some reason, because it happened prior to like 2008 or whatever the arbitrary number is, it just like doesn't stick. Like it can't escape the event horizon. Whereas like something like Jonathan Majors or like, you know, what's another example of something Jonathan Majors or, I mean, not Jared Leto, because that's like a very big, not that what Jonathan Majors did wasn't big, but like the thing that Jared Leto was accused of is like just narratively like a much larger thing.
And it's something that there's been rumors about that for a long time, but just nobody had come forward.
Yeah.
And
but like somebody like Jonathan Majors, like because it happened so recently, I don't think people are going to let it go. Like I think he'll stay maybe some like in 20 years or maybe in 10 years, he'll come back as like a dude in his 40s or whatever. I don't know. But like, it's certainly not going to happen in the prime of his life, in the prime of his would-be acting career. I don't think people are going to let it go. Just simply because it happened in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Or like Armie Hammer. Like,
yeah, he seems to be trying to make a comeback.
And I don't think it's going to work beyond the realm. Like all these people, I think they will have like comebacks or whatever. Louis C.K. is another one. They'll have comebacks, but like they'll be in the lane of like, they're going to exist. Like this is like their original career, pre-accusations, pre-things coming to light about them. And they're going to exist in this level of like social media grifter.
Yeah.
I'm going to be in some weird straight to streaming movies realm. Like that's where they'll stay.
Some of these people committed actual crimes. Some of these people really hurt people. And some of these people said things. And it's fascinating who gets pushed out of what arena, when, and where, depending on their crimes and or the things they've said. Like Gina Carano. What she said is objectively offensive. It's super offensive. And it's understandable why they pushed her out of the Star Wars show. I totally stand behind that. I would probably do the same thing. Like if an actor who was working on one of our projects said something crazy like that, I'd be like, and you done. We're not partying with you. Later. But it's interesting that everybody backed away from her at the same time because it's an objectively offensive thing to say. Whereas the Jonathan Majors thing is so interesting to me because it feels like, yes, he did something wrong. He was acquitted on like 2 or 3 of the charges, but like convicted on 1. But it was like a weird like misdemeanor where he did hurt that person physically, but it wasn't positioned as like assault and battery or something. I don't remember the exact specific details, but you know what I'm saying? Like there's people who've done way worse stuff than that guy. Like I'm not saying that we should immediately be like, oh, Jonathan Majors, give him an Oscar.
Well, yeah,
but you know who we did give? Mel Gibson. He knocked that woman's teeth out, and he's been nominated for Oscars.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's just like, I mean, number one, there's a lot more like nuanced political maneuvering in what we as individuals choose to believe or like turn a blind eye to than anybody would like to admit.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a lot, you know, sometimes you can be more strict on somebody if you're such a huge fan of them because you're like so betrayed by it.
Holding them to a higher standard.
Yeah, sometimes you're less strict because you just aren't as familiar with the person, so you're just like, you can just pretend like you don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the opposite where you give leniency to people and you don't want to believe that they're bad because you really love them, and then you're like way quicker to judge somebody because you just don't really care about them that much. There's a lot of weird political stuff that goes into what we choose to like hold people account to or to believe than many people would like to admit. I also think that another thing that comes into play, which I think I've said on the show before, of like, or maybe I've just said it in, you know, in regular conversation, is like somebody like Joe Rogan, for example, who, he'll say controversial things or whatever, and it'll be like a big stink. And, he says something that people are offended by, and then it's just like, people are calling for him to be canceled or whatever, like he should be deplatformed or whatever. And then like it doesn't really happen, and it's like, why does that not happen? But then like Al Franken, the senator from Minnesota, like somebody showed a photo of him like kind of pretending like he was honking some woman's boob while she was asleep, and then he got, he basically had to resign in shame because of that. And it's like the reason for that is because like only Joe Rogan's audience can cancel Joe Rogan. Like people who don't like Joe Rogan in the first place can't cancel him.
Yeah.
His audience is the only person that can cancel him, and his audience doesn't care. Or they agree with him, or they don't think it's wrong or whatever. Or maybe they do have disagreements with certain things, but they, give him the benefit of the doubt, or for whatever reason. Like the only person who could like stop Joe Rogan is the people who are fans of him.
Yeah.
So then there's that coming into the play where it's like certain people just have certain audiences that are just more willing to be okay with certain things. And, maybe there was just a certain cadre of types of fans of Jonathan Majors that were just, like zero tolerance. No way am I dealing with that bullshit. Whereas like, maybe the fans of Mel Gibson are people who, I don't know if I say they actively endorse domestic assault, but maybe they're the type of person who thinks that any woman who accuses somebody of abuse is lying for attention or whatever.
Well, the interesting thought experiment about the Jonathan Majors situation is because he was on the biggest platform possible with the Marvel Kang role, and they were basically waiting to see how the court trial was going to go. So if the trial had fully acquitted him, he would still be Kang, but because he got convicted on one of the 3 or 4 counts, whatever it was, they were like, okay, we're done. What's interesting to me about that is, would the narrative have been as black and white, and would his career have been as stymied if he had not been on that high that high a pedestal, right? Like, let's just say that had come out when he was doing like the interstitial stage of his career where he was still doing big budget things, but not before he had been cast as Kang yet, right? I don't remember the exact timeline, but like the Creed movie that he was the villain in, right? Like things on that level. I don't think that he would have gotten the spotlight as much. Like I'm sure there would have been a court case. I'm sure people would have been seeking justice for however he wronged the people involved in that. And this is not me victim shaming or anything. I'm just saying like the fact that there was so much attention and so much heat on him specifically is because he was being seemingly culturally primed to be the next big guy, and kind of already was. He kind of already was the next big guy. He was, in these big movies and the main villain of the entire universe of Marvel. And like, I think they were saying for Kang Dynasty, he was going to get $25 million. And then for whatever the original 5th Avengers movie was, he was going to get $30 million. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, and also he had like an pre-existing fan base that were built from the fact that he was in Lovecraft Country, which was like a show that like simultaneously, obviously the type of people who are interested in that show probably are more likely to care about social justice issues than other people on average. And also like that show was kind of like seen as like an underdog because it got canceled after the first season and people really wanted it to continue. Yeah. And I guess it was apparently canceled not because of ratings, but because there was like some
behind the scenes drama
stuff happening. And the network or what was it, HBO? They just canceled it out of like fucking they liability bullshit.
There was a big like Hollywood Reporter or Deadline article. I think it was Hollywood Reporter where they basically were like the showrunner of Lovecraft Country, who was, I believe, a queer woman of color, had been basically like serially abusing people on the set and was very unkind and creating a toxic work environment. And HBO was they could only see 2 ways out of it. We let go the showrunner or we cancel the show. And they felt like politically the optics of firing the showrunner were going to be so bad for them that they should just cancel the show because it would save them all the headache.
Yeah. So because of that, it has this underdog energy to it. The people that are fans of it are like,
they really are fans
very
of
passionate about it. And they're like, this is a thing that should have been bigger.
Yeah.
So you have all of that momentum behind him as that happens.
Yeah.
Which I think is probably a larger backlash because of that.
And tying that back to Stern, it's interesting to see Howard Stern basically do the reverse of that. He took all of the energy and momentum of the publicity that he was generating from this beef, low-key got addicted to it, and was like, oh, I can ride this, and it can be pushing me to the next level of my career. And then, took it fucking too far, man. It's interesting to see Howard Stern's decisions paralleling this conversation we're having about Jonathan Majors, but in the reverse, where Majors was kind of battling against this massive wave of attention and popularity that he was definitely in charge of starting, but then became this bigger thing that came back to haunt him when he made some flawed decisions, because he's human like the rest of us. But Stern fully stoked this fire the whole time and was directing the tidal wave of animosity towards this other person. And it's fascinating to think about, could this happen today? Could you do this today? Would you even do this today? I don't know.
Well, I mean, for a variety of reasons, I think not. I mean, number one, I mean, even, reading this, it's like obviously definitely of a time, because we're looking at these two figures, and one of them is being described as like a jovial dad-like figure who tells dad jokes. He's like obviously, kind of depicted as like not the hero, but like the victim in the situation or whatever. And kind of like, oh, he's just this lovable guy who just like, had a radio show or whatever. But then it's just like casually mentioning that like he judged wet t-shirt contests. And it's like anybody in a modern context who like publicly was like judging wet t-shirt contests would not be thought of as like a jovial father figure type guy. Like that people would not think that way. So it's already there's like cultural differences in the 90s versus now, or the late 80s versus now. And then, I don't think any of the stuff that Howard Stern was doing would be looked at kindly now. Like all these things, like, even before he had the wife on, Annette, like just the way, any of the stuff that he was saying, the very inflammatory way he was talking about this, like, I think a lot of people would have looked down on that, and it wouldn't have just, you kind of get the sense that when this stuff happened, it was just like, yeah, it's just Howard Stern. He's a shock jock. He just does stuff like this. Whereas I think in a modern context, for better or worse, sometimes in overstepping ways, but sometimes in reasonable ways, people would look at this and be like, this is bad. Like, we don't like this. You shouldn't be able to say stuff like that. I don't think it would have flown anywhere near as easily. So I don't even think he would have been able to get to that point of like even doing any of this shit. I mean, he would have been able to do it. I mean, social media influencers do weirder, worse shit than this. But he wouldn't have been able to do it without being highly controversial in the first place. And then on top of that, I think that, once again, going back to my sort of time frame thing, if this thing happened where he brought Annette DeBella onto the show and did all this gross, creepy stuff, and then she like committed suicide like the next day,
there'd be a tearful YouTube apology video.
Yeah, I mean, I think people would have lost their shit. Like, it wouldn't have just like gone softly into that good night. Like, people would have fucking lost their shit if this happened. This would have been the Logan Paul going into the
100%
Japanese forest event.
100%.
He would have been fucked.
Yeah.
And obviously come back
deservedly
3 years later and become more famous than he was before. Like Logan Paul. But like at the time, he would have been fucked. But I think it's, there's the cultural difference thing there, where I guess it was just a different time, and people just didn't think about these things in the same way. Not necessarily that people like condone these things, but just like I said before, like I think people just thought of celebrities differently then. And now we kind of are just like, fuck these people. Like, they're just rich assholes and they just get to do whatever they want. But back then, everybody just wanted to be a celebrity. And you kind of thought of it like, oh, when you're a celebrity, you get to do things other people can't do. And that's desirable, and I want that. And I like it whenever I see them doing stuff like that, because maybe I get to do that someday.
It's the wish fulfillment of, you get to say all the things out loud I wish I could say but can't because I have a fucking dead-end job.
Yeah, and now there's still people like that. But a lot of people are like, fuck this. I don't like that these people just get away with murder because they're famous. They shouldn't have special rights because they like get on a camera and say stuff. So there's cultural difference. And then also, I just think that literally because it happened pre 2008 or whatever the number is, it just doesn't escape the event horizon.
Yeah.
And also, you got to assume that there was just some powerful like money being spent.
Oh yeah, there are people invested in suppressing that.
Yeah. Because like you said, that would never happen today. Like, if this happened, everybody would know about it. Like, this is like not a very well known story, even though it should be, or it seems like it would be. Nowadays, if this happened, everybody would fucking know about this.
Yeah, it'd be online immediately, and then there'd be a TMZ article, and YouTubers left and right would be like, can you believe this fucking guy?
I know about way more obscure controversies of shit that I never asked or wanted to know about.
Yeah.
Because you just can't escape
Yeah,
drama like that.
Like that time Chuchi Wuchi got drunk and drove his car into the side of a Blockbuster and then groped that woman.
I mean, I lost so much respect for him. And you got to question why, even before he turned into an evil extra-dimensional being and tried to kill us and we had to end up, like, destroying him. Like, even before that, we were like, hey, Chuchi Wuchi, our hero.
Yeah,
like,
you're a cool dude.
Like, even we kind of gave him a pass for that.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I'm Dave Baker.
And I'm Andrew Price.
This has been Deep Cuts. If you'd like to find me on the internet, you can do so at heydavebaker.com. Or if you want to pick up a little bookie book, you can do that wherever books are sold. Mary Tyler Moorhawk, my hybrid graphic novel about a guy in the future obsessed with a TV show 100 years in the past. Andrew, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find us on social media by going to Facebook and searching Deep Cuts Podcast. You can join our Facebook group by searching Deep Cuts Podcast Facebook group and joining that. There's a cool little community of people who talk about the show and make memes and all that kind of stuff. You can also join our Discord server by going to bit.ly.com/deepcutsdiscord, where there's another cool community of people who talk about the show, make memes, play games, so on and so forth. You can follow us on Instagram at DeepCutsPod. You can follow us on TikTok at Mystery Treehouse. You can go to our shop, deepcutspod.com, click on the shop. You can get hats, t-shirts, baby onesies, coffee mugs with cool Deep Cuts graphics on them. And you can also follow me on TikTok at Treehouse Detective. And you can check out my Substack, substack.com/upinthetreehouse. Deep Cuts is a production by Boy Genius Media. If you'd like to find this show and others like it, please visit boygeniusmedia.com or deepcutspod.com.
If you want to join in on post-episode discussions, please join the Deep Cuts Podcast Facebook group. Finally, subscribe to our YouTube channel for additional video content.
The incidental music for this episode was created by D. Catalano, whose music can be found at wekeepoddhours.bandcamp.com. This episode of Deep Cuts was written by Adam Smith. If you'd be interested in writing for Deep Cuts, email andrew@boygeniusmedia.com.